Hey everyone, welcome to the Incubator Podcast. I'm your co-host Aaron Boyd, and this is Sabir Saran. And today, once again, we are joined by Theom's CEO and founder, Navindra Yadav. And Navindra is here today to talk about the data economy, if you will. In the domain of data security posture management, how is the data economy impacted? How do we employ data governance? How does that governance and management translate into securing that data? And so we're going to dive right into these topics. Before we do, Navindra, any words you'd like to share about yourself before we go into this topic? Please feel free to expand on the topic just from where I teed it up.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast again. Really a pleasure and an honor to be talking to both of you again. And to your listeners. So I'm Navindra Yadav, CEO and co-founder of Theom. Your question was, what about data economy? So this is a fascinating world where, if I just dial back a few years back, there were typically people used to think of data lakes and data warehouses as one place where you go dump your data, do queries against it, and get some results back, and then start serving your user base or whoever your customer was from that point. But now the data world has evolved into places where once you load your data into a platform like Snowflake or Databricks, you can now start connecting right from inside your warehouse or data lake, or essentially they call it data clouds, with other consumers and producers of data. And these consumers and producers of data may not even be inside your organization. They may be external, they may be internal inside your organization. And there's this whole concept of data meshes that are being created. But all that communication, sharing of data happens inside the larger data cloud rather than even coming out of the data cloud. And it's a fascinating new world, a lot of new synergies being developed. We see customers in the financial space, healthcare space, where they're actually trading or sharing data with their vendors and partners downstream, as well as partners upstream, including companies like Disney. If you actually look at Disney and how Disney is using Snowflake, you'll see these fascinating examples of what their SVPs are talking about, how they move data around. But it's fascinating.
So I am kind of mind-boggled by that, if I may use that term here, Navindra, because there's so many implications when you talk about this kind of data economy, data mesh, and the concept of sharing data that we may not even be aware of that is happening directly, indirectly on the back end. And so this raises various implications of what is happening to my data. Am I right? And how not only am I permitting that, whether I don't know if I may use it consciously or subconsciously, whatever is happening behind the scenes. So what does that mean? How is that happening out there, Navindra? Because people think that, hey, I control my data, I'm putting it into this data lake or this data warehouse, and it is within my four walls, if you will. But there exists this second economy or this other external data economy. How is that manifesting itself? How do I wrap my head around that in terms of implications from a security standpoint?
Absolutely. Fantastic question again. So if I may share my screen, I'll just show you one view of how we typically view this land, exactly like you mentioned. We typically think of the data clouds as something that's sit at the end of as a resource or an asset on the right, and then they're protected by various layers. And this is a very simplified diagram. Various layers, there are company devices, we've got EDRs and other technologies that are watching those points of presence. Then we've got some firewalling solution. We may have some CASB solution, which sits inside the same layer, or ZTNA and so on and so forth, which actually go protect the cloud resources or BI tools and so on and so forth. And these resources typically access the data clouds. And our belief as security practitioners is that's it. It's anything that goes in and out of that will go through these choke points. So we'll be able to figure out if data is actually leaving my environment and so on and so forth. But not so true or accurate any longer, because all of these environments are big, large environments by themselves. And I'll give a simple example. A line of business inside your company may turn around and say, okay, this is a data product that I'm going to monetize, and I publish it inside the data mart of Snowflake or data mart of Databricks, and let some downstream consumer consume this, and that consumer this data that I'm producing. Because I'm monetizing it, most likely this customer is, or the consumer is outside. Now, as security professionals, how do we even know the right data is getting shared out or the right controls have been put inside? If I look at that Snowflake or Databricks, it really opens up into this larger environment of data actually getting shared. Lines of businesses turn around, share data inside with other lines of businesses, and so that they can actually enrich their data.
So Navindra, if you hold on just 1 second there, you talked about this exchange that's happening. So let me play this out just to make sure my simplistic mind understands this. So while I'm thinking that my exchange is coming in through the front door, when I am a Snowflake, Databricks, as an example, user, and some of my business partners, whether they're customers or other, again, business entities that I'm exchanging information, they're not necessarily coming in through the front door, but if you will, the back door, which exists in the Snowflake, Databricks, whatever universe of data lakes and data warehouses that exist out there. So there's this in exchange through this concept of a data mesh that's happening, and we need to be aware of that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And as you see in this figure, there's something called a Snowflake marketplace. In this case, there's something like a Unity catalog in case of Databricks. Similar concepts. So think of it as a data mart. Lines of businesses or whoever owns the data, they typically, the data owner, can publish a version of the same data, publish it out into this marketplace. And depending upon the controls that they've set, this marketplace can exchange data outside to providers or consumers outside, as well as consume data from people outside your company or even inside the same product. So here you, for example, see something like a data product is being offered by one business unit. Another line of business is actually sending its own data there. It gets joined, you get better things. So the whole idea with this whole data meshes is you can exchange information, single copy of data. There's one owner of the data who actually knows the data is clean and fresh and things, and they're responsible for maintaining the data, but data gets exchanged all around the place. And this data is not coming out of the platform to the traditional control points that the security people watch. And that's the big thing for. So your governance, and the message is your governance. If I'm a data governance person or data access governance person, I should be watching and doing all these functions inside Snowflake or inside Databricks to get the right controls placed so that I know what data. So visibility has to be inside these platforms.
Wow. So how do we actually get that visibility, Navindra, right? I think that's where folks are grappling with these days is not only there's the one concept was the traditional IAM access of things, cloud entitlements, if you will. The other is, and that maybe takes you down to your data store level. But what you're saying is that's not enough. We need to get much more granular, not only from your internal side of things, but on the back side of things. So how do you get your head around that data file aspect, and how do you actually then start to monitor or secure that to ensure how that data is traversing?
Absolutely. Great questions again. Maybe I'll start with a bit of an evolution. Earlier days, before all of these data meshes and things or data clouds really became popular, was like, if I secure my application and my compute infrastructure, my IaaS layer, or do AppSec, I'm actually sufficiently protected because I can see the exchange of data. So that was step zero, if you will. Then people evolved into the state, like if I take small snapshots of the data and classify it and do all of that thing, I'll get good data governance or I'll get good data discovery, because I'll get a sense of what type of data is there, where's my sensitive data, and so on and so forth. So they started off with the snapshotting tools where snapshots take data out of the environment and try to snapshot it. That solution only works to some extent. Then there were these proxy-based solutions which sat in front of the warehouse or the data store and said, okay, we'll be this proxy. Every query that goes in and out of the database, and these solutions were more popular with databases. You go through the proxy, and proxy can actually look at what type of query are you pushing into the system and so on and so forth, and are you even allowed to do this query? So they were trying to build data access governance and data governance by inserting a proxy layer. What's the challenge with the proxy layer is scale. It doesn't really scale, because now if you look at the environment like this, and if you have a proxy in front of it, all application traffic has to pass through it. Even my providers have to go through it and so on and so forth. It just doesn't work. And it doesn't scale with the infrastructure. These are humongous, massively scaled systems. That's what really Snowflake, Databricks, and so on and so forth are known for. So the approach that we have taken, as well as the solution that works, is run inside this environment. All your delivery of data access governance runs natively as part of Snowflake, natively as part of Databricks, so that you could see what's actually happening. First of all, you can classify the data where the data sits. There's no snapshotting, no snapshots that need to be taken now. There's no sampling that needs to be done. You really see the data where it is, and you're not making copies of the data and so on and so forth. The next step is you see every access that's actually happening to the data. You can actually look at the system itself. System tells you that, and then you can apply the good governance principles on top of it so that you can drive governance inside. And this natively works, and you work with them, marketplaces, and so on and so forth. So you see things in real time. You can also take it a step further in these architectures. You can detect attacks. So one is governance. Governance is, okay, are we following the policy that we are supposed to be doing? So those are governance rules. Are we putting the regulatory frameworks, complying with that? The next thing in this environment is someone attacking your data? That's another thing that you can go discover and detect and stop if you're running with the data stores.
So Navindra, when we consider data as a product, now we're talking about some of the complexities, and we're addressing where do you secure. And it's not enough to be proxy. It's not enough to be agent-based. You have to be part of the system. Totally get that. We're talking about how you secure, which is also extremely important. Although it's still, I think the idea of March, the idea of making self-service and being able to enable some of these exchanges is also a very interesting concept. But the other question is, who is responsible, or who do you find is most engaged when it comes to bringing something like a Theom into their world? Who do you find is the appropriate person to start with? Is it now the product owner who is trying to create this interconnectedness? Is it the security practitioner who's really tasked with still safeguarding some of this data in the environment? Or is it a combination? Where do you find purchase in terms of who's championing something like Theom?
So this is completely a new space that's forming up. So the answer depends. It depends on the organization to organization, but I'll give you general patterns that we're observing. The most common pattern is if you talk to the buying center that bought Databricks, Snowflake, these type of products, or AWS Redshift, and so on and so forth. If you've or Azure Synapse and things. So depending upon who bought it, those people tend to understand this problem really well, and they're the ones struggling with this problem. So people who do data governance or data access governance right away get the problem and say, okay, that's the problem. That's the solution that I want, and I need a solution that really simplifies things. But there's also something that you touched on. Often the security guys are also stakeholders inside these conversations. So what we typically have in some of our deals, which we've closed, we've seen the budget came from the security side of the house, but the operators are the data people. The data ops people land up operating and operationalizing the product and taking it further, because they're the ones who understand the space. But there's a dual outcome that goes. One outcome goes to the security center so that they can actually see the data isn't getting attacked. So the security operations center and so on and so forth can get engaged with the product. Then there's a governance side, which also uses the same products to see that their governance requirements are getting applied. So for example, if I take this example of, and I show the same thing because I was showing it with Snowflake, take Databricks, for example. Think governance people may say that my product, my data product, which has been published on the Unity catalog, can be shared by external customers. That's perfectly okay for an external customer to look at it. But the customer has to be in this geo, or has to be someone that we have approved that this is the only customer, and they should only be looking at this kind of data type thing. So that's another control that the governance people would want to ensure that this gets applied. So that goes into this field of data access governance. And data governance by itself looks at lineage, looks at whether the right schemas are being followed. There's a master, there's an MDM system. Are we in compliance with the MDM system? Reports getting generated, all of that stuff. Access governance takes it a step further. Are the right people accessing the data? Are we over provisioned in terms of access? That's another problem that customers look at a lot. Are we over provisioned? They want provisions to be dynamically met. Secondly, are the people that are provisioned to look at this data using the data correctly, or are they abusing the data? So things like that. That's really what people start looking for. By the way, when I showed Databricks, the same concept applies exactly with Snowflake, and these are figures from their own websites.
Yeah, and even on some of those subjects, we talk about lineage, provenance, data provenance is important to folks. And now you come to something like Theom, where controls can now follow the data. You have proof of action. These are all important things from a governance perspective, particularly, as you said, this is a nascent field. It's a growing field. And we can imagine the concerns that are going to come out of this. And so having a solution like Theom, I imagine with that proof of action, with their DLT technology as a backend, is going to be so important from a governance perspective. I imagine you hold a similar idea with that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's really what customers need: provability. They need simplicity of consumption of the product. And if auditors actually ask, I was recently with a particular customer that we just onboarded, I think. With them, the use case is very simple. I've got these medical records that I have. They're from the healthcare space. I've got these medical records. These records are loaded into Snowflake. I need to ensure no one is accessing it from inside the company, except for this particular use case. That's the only access that should be there. There's a governance rule, and they need to prove this to the auditors. And this data has to be stored for 7 years or 10 years. There's a legal hold type of situation there that they need to keep the data. They cannot be deleted, but there's only certain use cases that for which the data can be used and nothing else. And when people are accessing the data, they should only be, for those use cases, certain columns that should get accessed, and other columns should always be masked. It's a pretty sophisticated use case thing, and keep this proof with you. And that's where all this DLT technology comes in. You bring in the DLT technology so that the provability is there, so that when they get audited, or they have to show this every year to their auditors, downstream customers, because they're holding their customers' data. There's a lot of sensitive information inside it. They can prove it with confidence, and they're not using just one human or one system that they always keep locked down. Now they're consolidating all of these different stores into a data cloud.
And I guess a natural question that comes out of this for me is, how easy is it in Theom to model some of the business use cases? So if a new potential arises or a new use case arises, how easy is it to go in and model and say, great, now I can demonstrate that you are doing exactly what you said. I can demonstrate all of the security controls around this. And then who would do that? Do you find that you have maybe a product owner that is going in and modeling this, and then it's verified by the security team? Does the security team partner up and say, great, I'm using Theom, I will marry the security aspects to your business use case? In practicality, how does that work out?
So what we are seeing is there's a data access governance team or a data governance team. So usually data access governance, what we've observed, sits very close with the data governance team or under it or with it, I think. So they know for this particular use case, these are the rules that need to be followed. These are the compliance things, regulations that need to be followed. So they take the base compliance requirements which come as part of Theom built in. They go say, okay, I'll pick from that particular regulation. And on top of that, what I'm going to do is put these constraints. Example that I just gave, there are certain fields that should only be accessed, nothing else should be accessed, and only these roles should access. And whenever it gets accessed, I need a record being created in some immutable system so that we can prove after the fact. So they'll create these rules or these ground rules, define the rules on top of Theom. And after that, they'll pass it on to the product owners and say, you're the product owners, make sure this keeps running. And what we want to see from you is a report that comes back to our team so that we can show the auditors and compliance. So there's a relationship between both teams because the product owners are the data owners. So they take over, and this usually comes as a centralized function. Product owners own the data. They're the lines of the businesses. They take the governance controls in, have provability back. In fact, they don't even have to publish a dashboard. Theom itself creates the dashboard for the governance team so that the governance teams know that things are in order. So it's collaborative. And security also has a stake in this whole thing because they're looking from an attack and data abuse point of view that the right controls have been applied. So they can see, and the product owners now can run as fast as they want with their data and sharing till they're following the business rules, security rules and the governance rules. Things.
So Navindra, I think you're describing how the left hand should be talking to the right hand in an organization where you have the governance aspect of things, the compliance folks, then you have the security guys as well. But how do we ensure that both folks are talking to each other? If I go back, I was at FSISAC last week or two, and I think this was really evident where even though it's a security conference and you could take that hard approach of securing your data and who has access to it, but I feel like there was a larger theme coming from the compliance side of the things. So how do we bring it together in these conversations? Where does this all start to build this end-to-end story? Because I feel if we talk to security, it really might just stop right at, hey, I will take it to entitlements of the data. I'll say that this is where my data is and it's secure. But in reality, what you just described, not only from the mesh and overall data economy side of things is, provability, auditability has to be way further entrenched and extensible to prove out. So how do we bring these two sides together in a practical way?
Absolutely. And that's really a journey that we're also seeing our customers evolve through because first step, they all start off with baby steps or initial steps. You have to crawl before you start walking, before you start running, and so on and so forth. That's exactly what happens here too. First step is turn the lights on for at least people outside the data space. Turn the light on and tell them what's actually happening in this environment, this kind of diagrams, things. And that's classify your data, catalog your data, all of that is table stakes. Understand what's actually happening, what type of data is sensitive, and so on and so forth. Find relationships. Where is data actually getting exchanged and shared with? Find these kind of arrows and so on and so forth so that people get a better sense of what's happening in that. That's usually step one for people giving that kind of visibility. There's also all these platforms, they keep changing, as in the usage of the platform changes. A new warehouse gets published inside or a new data store gets published. So the system has to be constantly evolving and constantly feeding out reports. So people then create rules. And that's really as the maturity of the organization grows, they'll create their governance rules. Most organizations who adopt a platform like Snowflake or Databricks usually have a data team that generally follows these principles. So generally things. So what we've seen is bring the data team close to the security team, make them, and you need a product that actually spans both of these buying centers or organizational silos so that they can both see what's actually happening and enable each other. Usually in the absence of this, security tends to become the department of no. They start dragging their feet because they don't know what the other side is doing. So if any new tool comes along, like a company wants to buy an XYZ data store or bring that product in, if security is told about it, usually they'll put hurdles in the acquisition process and so on and so forth. So the best way to do that is enable both teams so that they can do their jobs more effectively. And what we've seen is bring both to the table, the data teams as well as security teams to the table. Data teams, because they understand what they're trying to do, but they may not know all the reasons why security, all the compliance things and so on and so forth, and then give them a single platform where they can both drive their use cases in and get the outcomes that they desire, as well as have audit and compliance locked into the same product so that they can see, yes, this did happen. And if this happened, what was the mitigations that we had, and so on and so forth, and go from there. So probability is there so that they can do their job better. Yeah. It's an evolving space. People are learning more. That's what I observe in the whole data space.
So Navindra, clearly you are a master of data, given your pedigree and certainly what you have assembled together from a Theom perspective. We hope that our listener base and anybody else, for that matter, really takes heed to this kind of evolving data economy and perspective, and comes to look at Theom and see how Theom can actually map this out in a way that we haven't seen out there, and looking forward to those conversations both with yourself and other clients and listeners at large. So anybody who has those questions, thoughts, ideas, would like to test drive Theom, please reach out to us or reach out to Theom, and we look forward to working with you. Navindra, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you, Sadhbir. Thank you, Darren. And we see ourselves as a security platform for the data economy. And you can reach out to us at sales@theom.ai, or like Sadhbir mentioned, directly to them, Sadhbir or Darren, and they'll redirect. They know how to get hold of us. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.